The silence of my home in early December was a precious thing. It was a soft, cashmere blanket woven from memories, the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, and the whisper of the wind against the frosted windowpanes. It was a silence I had earned, a quiet sanctuary built after a lifetime of noise. And then, the phone rang, shattering it all with a single, cheerfully oblivious announcement. That one phone call would become the catalyst, the spark that lit a fire I didn't even know was smoldering within me. It would lead to a Christmas unlike any other, not one of peace on earth and goodwill toward men, but one of calculated silence and devastating, righteous revenge. This is the story of how I stopped being the world's best mother-in-law, and finally started being my own savior. If you've ever felt taken for granted, used, or pushed to your absolute limit, then you know the feeling I'm talking about. It's a slow burn that ends in an explosion. Stick around, because this story is for you. And if it resonates, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens when a woman who has given everything finally decides to take something back. Part 1, The Gilded Cage of Expectation. My life, to an outsider, probably looked idyllic. I live in the house my late husband, Tom, and I built together. It's a sprawling, comfortable home with a big garden, more rooms than one woman needs, and a kitchen that was designed for chaos and laughter. For 35 years, that kitchen was the heart of our family. It was where Tom and I danced to old records while making pasta, where our son, David, did his homework, and where every Christmas cookie for the school bake sale was meticulously decorated. After Tom passed away 5 years ago, the house grew quieter, but the memories remained, embedded in the very walls. I cherished them. I polished them like fine silver. David was a good son. Kind, gentle, but with a spine made of something a little too flexible. He fell head over heels for Megan, a woman who was as bright and bubbly as a glass of champagne, and just as intoxicating. In the beginning, I was thrilled. She made my son happy. She was energetic, full of life, and she seemed to love him dearly. I welcomed her into the family with open arms, eager to build the kind of mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship you read about in magazines. I taught her my grandmother's pie crust recipe. I gave her the pearl earrings Tom had bought me on our 10th anniversary. I wanted her to feel like a daughter. But over the years, I began to see the steel beneath the velvet. Megan's cheerfulness was a tool, a brightly colored wrecking ball she used to demolish boundaries. It started small. "Oh, Laura, you don't mind if I borrow this dress, do you? You never wear it anymore." It would be gone for months, sometimes returned with a small stain, sometimes not at all. Then it was, "David and I are dying for a date night. You're a lifesaver for watching little Chloe on such short notice." The short notice was usually 20 minutes. I was the best mother-in-law ever when I was useful. I was the emergency babysitter, the free caterer for their dinner parties, the keeper of their spare keys for when they inevitably locked themselves out. I did it all with a smile, because that's what mothers do, right? You give. You accommodate. You bend, so that others don't have to. You tell yourself it's for your son, for the harmony of the family. But bending, over time, starts to feel a lot like breaking. The Christmas season had always been my time, and Tom's. We loved it. The house would be filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. He'd string the lights outside, grumbling theatrically about the cold, while I'd mull the wine. We'd host a Christmas Eve dinner, a manageable affair with a few close friends and family. It was about warmth, connection, and peace. Since he'd been gone, I'd tried to keep the tradition alive, but on a smaller, quieter scale. It was a way of holding him close. So, when my phone rang on that chilly December afternoon, I was in my element. A fire was crackling in the hearth, a cup of Earl Grey was steaming on the table beside me, and I was looking through an old photo album of Christmases past. Tom's smiling face looked up at me from a glossy photo, his arm around a teenage David. I smiled back. "Hello?" I answered, my voice warm. "Laura." "Hi. Got a second?" It was Megan. Her voice was pitched an octave higher than usual, a sure sign she was about to announce something she'd already decided. Of course, dear. How are you? How are David and Chloe? Oh, we're fantastic. So excited. And we have the most wonderful news. I felt a faint, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. It was the same feeling I got when a storm was about to roll in. Oh. What's that? Well, she began, drawing the word out. My family has been trying to figure out Christmas this year. You know how it is. My sister Jen is flying in with her 3, and my parents really want to see everyone, and my aunt and uncle are driving down from up north. It's a whole thing. I made a non-committal sound. It sounds like a full house. Exactly. And my parents' place is just too small, and Jen's kids are so rambunctious, they need space to run around. So, we all had a chat, and we came up with the perfect solution. The prickling sensation intensified. My hand, holding the teacup, felt suddenly unsteady. I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, what was coming next. I was standing on a cliff's edge, and Megan was gleefully skipping towards me, ready to give a little shove. My whole family is spending Christmas at your place this year, she declared, her voice bursting with manufactured joy, as if she were bestowing upon me a great and wonderful gift. It's only 25 people. Isn't that great? The teacup rattled against the saucer. Only 25. The words echoed in the sudden, cavernous silence of my living room. The fire in the hearth seemed to shrink. The air grew thin. 25 people. Not invited. Announced. An invasion force, arriving under a flag of festive cheer. I stared at the photo of Tom. His smile felt like a memory from another lifetime. I tried to force a lightness into my own voice, a Herculean effort that made my throat ache. Only 25? I repeated, the words tasting like ash. The smile I was forcing was a grotesque mask, and I was grateful she couldn't see it. Yes. It'll be fun, she bulldozed on, completely oblivious to the tremor in my voice. You have such a big house, it's perfect. And you always cook so well, everyone is still talking about that brisket you made 2 Easters ago. My mom is so excited to not have to cook for once. Everyone is. Every word was a nail. You have a big house, so we will use it. You cook so well, so you will cook for us. My mom is excited to not cook, so you will cook for her. I was not a person. I was a resource. A convenience. A large, well-appointed appliance. My mind was a maelstrom. I saw it all in a flash flood of horror, 25 sets of muddy boots in my hallway. 25 towels to wash. Sleeping bags and air mattresses carpeting my beautiful hardwood floors. The cacophony, the endless noise, the mess. The sheer, back-breaking labor of cooking a Christmas dinner for 25 people with various dietary needs and preferences that would surely be texted to me in the coming days. The cost. The stress. The complete and utter violation of my home and my peace, especially during a season that was already so tender with grief, but what could I say? If I said no, I would be the villain. I would be the cruel, selfish mother-in-law who ruined Christmas. Megan would cry to David, who would call me, pleading for me to just be reasonable, to not cause drama. My refusal would be twisted into an attack on Megan's family, a rejection of their love. They had built the perfect trap, and baited it with tinsel and holly. I took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to anchor myself. The scent of pine and old paper filled my lungs. I looked at the grandfather clock. Tom's father had built it. Each tick was a heartbeat of my history. Tick. Tock. A decision had to be made. A persona had to be maintained. For now. Perfect, I said, and I was horrified by how sweet, how utterly accommodating my voice sounded. It was a voice I'd perfected over years of swallowing my own needs. That sounds like a Christmas to remember. I'll make sure everything is arranged. The relief and delight in Megan's voice was nauseating. Oh, Laura, I knew you'd say yes. I told my mom, don't worry, Laura is the absolute best. She'll be thrilled. You are seriously the best mother-in-law ever. The best servant ever, my brain corrected silently. We exchanged a few more pleasantries, every word from my mouth a carefully constructed lie. She promised to send me a list of who was coming and any little things they might need. I promised to get the guest rooms ready. We said our goodbyes, and I pressed the end call button with a thumb that was trembling with a rage so profound it felt glacial. I placed the phone down on the table with surgical precision. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skeletal branches of the oak tree in my backyard, stark against the bruised purple of the twilight sky. The silence of the house rushed back in, but it was different now. It was no longer a comfort. It was the quiet of a battlefield before the first shot is fired. They thought I would bend. They thought I would break. They thought they knew me, Laura, the sweet widow, the accommodating mother, the woman who lived to serve. They saw my kindness as a weakness, my generosity as an endless, exploitable resource. Standing there, watching the first few snowflakes of the evening begin to drift down, a new feeling began to bloom in the frozen soil of my anger. It was cold, and it was sharp, and it was utterly, breathtakingly clear. They had no idea who I really was. But they were about to find out. The best mother-in-law ever was about to give them a Christmas they would never, ever forget. And it all started with a single thought, a whisper that would soon become a roar: no. Not in my house. Not anymore. Part 2, The Weight of the Unspoken War. The night after the phone call was a wasteland of sleeplessness. Every time I closed my eyes, I didn't see sugar plums or festive wreaths. I saw a tidal wave of people cresting the hill of my driveway. I heard the phantom roar of 25 voices echoing in my quiet halls, the clatter of plates, the shrieks of children who were not my own grandchild. I felt the exhaustion in my bones before a single guest had even arrived. It was a premonition, a haunting of a future I was expected to accept with a smile. I'd get up, pace the cold floors in my nightgown, my own home feeling alien to me. I'd stand in the kitchen, the epicenter of the impending disaster, and run my hands over the cool granite countertops. This was my sanctuary. The place I came to think, to create, to find solace in the simple, methodical act of kneading dough or stirring a sauce. Megan's announcement had tainted it. It was no longer my kitchen, it was a future soup kitchen, a mess hall, and I was the unpaid, unthanked head cook. The anger from the day before had cooled into something heavier and more suffocating: dread. A thick, oily dread that coated every surface of my life. I knew I should call my son, David. I knew I needed to at least try to make him understand. Part of me, the part that still clung to the hope of family harmony, believed that if I could just explain it to him, he would see reason. He would run interference. He would be my son, my protector. I waited until the next afternoon, rehearsing the conversation in my head. I wouldn't be angry. I would be calm, rational. I would explain my feelings without accusation. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady, and dialed his number. "Hey, Mom." "What's up?" he answered, his voice cheerful. He was clearly still riding the high of his wife's perfect solution. "Hi, David. I'm calling about Christmas," I began, my voice even. "Megan told me the plan yesterday." "Oh, yeah. Is it wild or what?" "Megan is a genius for thinking of it. Your house is the only place big enough to handle the whole circus. It's gonna be epic." The word epic landed like a stone in my gut. For him, this was a party. For me, it was a sentence. "David, honey," I said, choosing my words with the care of someone walking through a minefield. 25 people is a lot. It's more than a lot. I'm not sure I'm up to hosting an event of that magnitude. The cooking alone." He cut me off, his voice losing a bit of its cheer. "Oh, come on, Mom. You're the best cook in the world. You can do it with your eyes closed. Megan's mom and aunts will probably help out." Probably help out. The vagueness of it was an insult. It meant they'd wander into the kitchen to chat and pick at things while I did all the heavy lifting. I'd seen it before at smaller gatherings. It's not just the cooking, David. It's the cleaning, the shopping, the sheer number of people in this house. This house, it's been so quiet since your father passed. Christmas is a hard time for me. I need peace, not a circus, as you called it. There was a pause. For a fleeting, hopeful moment, I thought I had broken through. I thought I heard a flicker of understanding. I was wrong. Look, Mom, he sighed, and I could hear the rustle of him shifting his weight, the physical embodiment of his discomfort. Megan's family is, they're a lot, I know. But this is really important to her. Her sister is coming from so far away, and she just wants everyone to be together. She already told everyone it's happening at our place, well, at your place. If you back out now, it'll look bad. It'll cause a huge fight with her and her mom, and I'll be in the middle of it. Can't you just do this for me? For the family? Do this for me. Not, what can we do to make this easier for you? Not, let's find another way. Just, suck it up. Absorb the cost, the labor, the stress. Be the family shock absorber, because it's easier than my son having an uncomfortable conversation with his wife. The last embers of hope for a peaceful resolution died in that moment. My son, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged and whose broken heart I had mended, was asking me to set myself on fire to keep his wife's family warm. I see, I said, and my voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I had tried so hard to inject into it. I understand your position. Great. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. I knew you'd understand, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. He had successfully outsourced his problem. Okay, gotta run, big meeting. Love you. I love you too, I said to a deadline. The days that followed were a slow-motion nightmare. My phone began to buzz incessantly. Megan, bless her efficient heart, had created a group chat. It was titled, Christmas at Laura's. Christmas tree Santa Claus light skin tone party popper. My name, my home, branded like a party venue. And then, the messages began to pour in. It was an avalanche of passive-aggressive requests and outright demands, all disguised as excited chatter, from Megan's sister, Jen, so excited. Just a heads up, little Timmy has a severe nut allergy, so the whole house will need to be a nut-free zone. And little Sophie is vegan. Can't wait to see what delicious vegan things you whip up, Laura. You're so creative. Winking face. From Megan's Aunt Carol, Laura, dear, would you mind making sure there's a good, supportive chair for my husband, Mike? His sciatica has been acting up. And he only drinks decaf coffee, freshly ground, if it's not too much trouble. From Megan's cousin, Stephanie, does the guest room have blackout curtains? Baby Kevin can only sleep in total darkness. Also, do you have a white noise machine? If not, maybe you could pick one up. On and on it went. A list of dietary restrictions that would challenge a professional caterer. A request for specific brands of toilet paper. A question about my Wi-Fi bandwidth to support multiple kids on their iPads. I was no longer a person, I was a concierge, a short-order cook, and a purchasing agent for a pop-up hotel I never agreed to open. I would read these messages while sitting in my quiet living room, the grandfather clock ticking away the seconds to my doom. With each ping of my phone, a piece of my resolve hardened. I stopped feeling dread and started feeling a strange, liberating sense of detachment. I would reply with cheerful, accommodating emojis, a thumbs up, a smiley face, a little Christmas tree. Of course. I'd type. No problem at all. Consider it done. They mistook my compliance for surrender. They had no idea it was camouflage. The true escalation came about a week after the initial phone call. Megan called me, her voice a little more serious this time. Hey Laura, quick question. So, my dad was wondering, since he's bringing his new smoker, he thought it would be fun to do a smoked prime rib on Christmas Day instead of a turkey. But he'll need you to pick up the prime rib, it's a specific cut from that fancy butcher downtown, and it needs to be aged for at least 3 weeks. He said you should probably order it now to make sure you get it. And he'll need about 10 pounds of hickory wood chips. I was silent. I was being tasked with ordering and paying for a wildly expensive cut of meat that a man I barely knew was going to cook on a machine he was bringing to my house, a house he had invited himself to. "Laura? You there?" "I'm here," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "A 10-pound, 3-week aged prime rib. From the downtown butcher. And hickory chips." "Got it. Perfect. Oh, and one more tiny thing. We're all going to come over on the 23rd to decorate the tree together. We'll bring the kids, it'll be a fun family activity. So don't bother getting a tree, we'll bring one. Just make sure you have all the ornaments and lights ready for us. And maybe have some of those ginger snap cookies ready. The kids love them." So, they were not only dictating the menu, they were now scheduling my life, orchestrating forced fun activities in my home, and demanding refreshments. They weren't just taking over my Christmas, they were erasing me from it, replacing my traditions and my peace with their chaos and their demands. I was to be the stage manager, the caterer, and the grateful audience for their perfect family Christmas. I looked at the phone in my hand. I could scream. I could cry. I could throw the phone against the wall and watch it shatter into 1,000 pieces. But I did none of those things. A profound, almost serene coldness washed over me. The war was not going to be won by fighting on their terms, by engaging in loud, messy battles. It was going to be won with silence, with strategy, and with the devastating power of a perfectly executed plan. "That sounds lovely, Megan," I said, my voice as smooth as silk. "I'll have the cookies waiting." As I hung up, I knew my path was set. The time for negotiation was over. The attempts to appeal to reason had failed spectacularly. They had pushed and pushed, assuming I was infinitely pliable. They had mistaken my silence for acceptance. They had no idea that beneath the silence, a revolution was being born. The struggle was over. The planning was about to begin. And I was going to build them a Christmas they had, in their wildest dreams, never seen coming. Part 3, The Architecture of Liberation. The turning point wasn't a lightning strike, it was the quiet, final click of a lock falling into place. It happened the evening after Megan's call about the prime rib and the tree decorating party. I was standing in my kitchen, staring at the grocery list I'd started to compile out of sheer, morbid habit. 10-pound prime rib. Hickory chips. Gluten-free flour. Vegan butter. Decaf coffee beans, freshly ground. White noise machine. It looked less like a Christmas shopping list and more like the supply manifest for a besieged outpost. I read the last item again. White noise machine. A device designed to drown out the world, to create a bubble of artificial peace. And it hit me with the force of a physical blow. They expected me to buy a machine to help their child sleep through the chaos they were bringing into my home, while they had given absolutely no thought to the chaos they were bringing into my life. The sheer, breathtaking entitlement of it all. I slowly crumpled the list in my fist. The paper crackled in the silent kitchen, a tiny sound of rebellion. That was it. The bending was over. The breaking was not going to happen. Instead, there would be a pivot. A clean, sharp, 90-degree turn away from the path they had laid out for me. My anger, which had been a hot, boiling rage and then a cold, heavy dread, transformed into something new. It became fuel. It was clean burning, efficient, and utterly silent. It powered my mind with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was an architect. And I was about to design my own escape. That night, I didn't pace the floors. I sat in Tom's old leather armchair, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls, and I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated my face. For a moment, I just looked at the search bar, the blinking cursor a tiny, rhythmic heartbeat of possibility. Where does a woman go when she is running away from a Christmas she never agreed to? My fingers, moving with a will of their own, typed, warm, quiet, last-minute December destinations. The results flooded the screen. Thailand. Mexico. The Caribbean. And then, I saw it. The Canary Islands. Photos of black sand beaches, turquoise water, and rugged, volcanic landscapes. It looked like another planet. A planet where there were no group chats, no prime rib demands, no sciatica chairs. A planet of sun and silence. A giddy, unfamiliar thrill coursed through me. It was the thrill of the clandestine, the joy of a secret rebellion. I started looking at flights. There was one leaving on December 22nd. It would be tight, but it was perfect. It would give me just enough time to set the stage. I looked at hotels. I found a small, adult-only boutique hotel in a quiet corner of Tenerife, with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. The website promised unparalleled peace and tranquility. I almost laughed out loud. It was as if the universe was conspiring with me. My heart was pounding, a wild drumbeat against my ribs. This was real. I was doing it. With every click, I was dismantling the cage they had built for me. Select flight. Add to cart. Confirm passenger details, Laura Jensen. 1 adult. 1 adult. The beautiful, singular simplicity of it. I entered my credit card information, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I clicked purchase. The confirmation email arrived seconds later with a cheerful ping. Your trip to Tenerife is confirmed. I leaned back in the chair, the soft leather sighing beneath me. I had done it. I had bought my freedom. For 2 glorious weeks, I would be unreachable, unaccountable, and utterly, blissfully alone. The next 10 days were the most bizarre and exhilarating of my life. I was living a double existence. On the surface, I was the perfect, accommodating hostess-to-be. I continued to answer the group chat with cheerful compliance. Laura, can you make sure to have some low-sugar juice boxes for the little ones? Megan's sister texted. You got it. Beverage box, I replied, while simultaneously Googling the best walking trails near my hotel in Spain. Don't forget the good napkins, Laura. Megan texted one afternoon. Not the paper ones. We want it to be special. Only the best for you all. Sparkles, I typed back, just after I had purchased a new swimsuit and a bottle of expensive, SPF 50 sunscreen. Each message was a small, delicious piece of my secret. Their demands had become a source of private amusement. They thought they were piling on the pressure, but they were just adding bricks to the launch pad I was building for my escape. Internally, I was a meticulous planner, a covert operative preparing for an extraction. I made a list. Not of groceries, but of tasks. Task 1, the house. The revenge had to be elegant. I wasn't a vengeful teenager throwing a tantrum, I was a woman drawing a line. I would not leave them a dirty, neglected house. That would give them something to complain about, a way to paint me as the crazy one. No, the house had to be perfect. Spotless. A pristine stage for the drama that was about to unfold. So, I cleaned. I cleaned with a fervor I hadn't felt in years. I dusted every corner, polished every piece of silver, washed every window until it gleamed. I wanted the house to be so perfect that its very emptiness would be an accusation. I even decorated. I put up the small, tasteful tree that Tom and I had always used. I hung the wreaths on the doors. I wanted them to walk into a picture-perfect Christmas scene, a beautiful, silent tableau of what could have been, if only they hadn't been so greedy. Task 2, the provisions. I had to leave them something. Just leaving the house empty felt incomplete. The gesture needed a focal point. A punchline. I went to the grocery store. I walked past the fancy butcher downtown without a second glance. I went to the frozen food aisle of the regular supermarket. There, I found it, the largest, most intimidatingly frozen turkey I had ever seen. It was a 20-pound boulder of ice and poultry. It would take days to thaw properly. I imagined them discovering it, the cold, hard reality of their situation summed up in a block of frozen bird. I bought it, along with a can of cranberry sauce and a box of stuffing mix. An emergency kit for the willfully helpless. Then, I went to a bookstore. I wandered through the aisles until I found the cooking section. And there it was, a book with a cheerful, slightly dated cover, titled, Cooking for a Crowd, Simple, Scaled-Up Recipes for 50 or More. It was perfect. A final, silent piece of sarcastic advice. Task 3, the note. This was the most important piece. The words had to be precise. Not angry. Not emotional. Just, factual. I spent an entire evening drafting it, writing and rewriting sentences until they were honed to a razor's edge. I used my best stationery, the thick, creamy paper I saved for important correspondence. I wrote it out in my neatest cursive. Dear Megan. You said your family was spending Christmas here, so I assumed you'd take care of the cooking and cleaning. I've gone on vacation, after all, I'm not your servant. Merry Christmas. Laura. Reading it back, a slow smile spread across my face. It was perfect. It was polite. It was devastating. On the morning of December 22nd, my suitcase was packed and waiting by the door. The house was immaculate. The tree was lit. On the gleaming kitchen counter, I placed a large, beautifully wrapped box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was the cookbook. Next to the box, I placed the note in a crisp, white envelope with Megan written on the front. I went to the garage freezer and retrieved the frozen turkey, placing the monolith on the counter beside the note. It looked like a modern art installation titled, Consequences. I walked through my house one last time, my footsteps echoing in the quiet. It felt like my own again. I wasn't running away from my home, I was cleansing it. I was taking back its soul. I adjusted a pillow on the sofa, straightened a picture frame on the wall. Everything was in its right place. The taxi to the airport was waiting. As I locked the front door behind me, the click of the deadbolt felt like the most satisfying sound in the world. I didn't look back. I was already looking forward, to the sun, the sea, and the sweet, sweet silence of a Christmas finally, truly, on my own terms. They wanted a Christmas to remember. I was about to give them one. Part 4, the sun-kissed verdict. The flight to Tenerife was like ascending into another reality. As the plane broke through the thick, gray blanket of German winter clouds, and sunlight, pure and brilliant, flooded the cabin, I felt a physical weight lift from my shoulders. It was the weight of expectation, of unspoken resentment, of years of quiet accommodation. With every mile we flew south, it dissipated into the thin, cold air. I didn't worry. I didn't second-guess myself. I ordered a small bottle of white wine, leaned my head against the cool window, and watched the world unfurl below. For the first time in a very long time, my mind was quiet. There were no lists to make, no meals to plan, no schedules to coordinate. There was only the hum of the engines and the vast, beautiful emptiness of the sky. The hotel was even better than the pictures. It was a whitewashed sanctuary nestled on a cliffside, overlooking an endless expanse of sapphire ocean. The air smelled of salt and bougainvillea. When the concierge showed me to my room, I stepped out onto the private balcony and the warm, gentle breeze hit my face. I could hear the rhythmic crash of waves on the rocks below. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I unpacked my swimsuit, my sunscreen, and the 3 novels I had promised myself I'd read for years. This wasn't just a vacation, it was a reclamation project for my own soul. Christmas Eve, the day of their planned arrival, was glorious. I woke up with the sun, not with an alarm clock. I had breakfast on my balcony, fresh fruit, coffee, and a pastry. There was no one to please, no one to serve. Around midday, as I lay by the pool with a book in my hand and the sun warming my skin, I allowed myself to imagine the scene unfolding back at my house. I pictured Megan's oversized SUV pulling into the driveway, followed by a clown car procession of her relatives' vehicles. They'd be loud, laughing, luggage and colorfully wrapped presents spilling out onto my pristine walkway. The kids would be running amok, already hyped up on sugar and anticipation. I saw Megan, beaming, leading the charge to the front door, ready to play the grand lady of the manor she had so generously commandeered. She'd unlock the door and swing it open with a flourish. "Welcome, everyone." And then, the silence would hit them. Not the peaceful, welcoming silence I so cherished, but a deep, unnerving, empty silence. The house would be warm, the Christmas tree lights would be twinkling, the air would smell faintly of pine and lemon polish. It would be a perfect, beautiful, empty stage. I could practically hear the confused murmurs. "Where's Laura? Did she step out?" They'd fan out through the house, their voices echoing in the empty rooms. "Laura? Are you here?" They'd find the guest rooms perfectly made up, with fresh towels on the beds, but utterly devoid of life. Finally, they would all congregate in the kitchen, the heart of the home, the place where the matriarch was supposed to be, slaving over a hot stove. And there, on the counter, they would see it. The elegantly wrapped package. The crisp, white envelope. And the 20-pound frozen turkey, sitting there like a pale, icy judgment. I imagined Megan picking up the note, her brow furrowed in confusion. I saw her face as she read my words. The slow draining of color. The flicker of disbelief, followed by the hot flush of humiliation as her entire family stood there, watching her, waiting for an explanation. I saw her sister, Jen, peering over her shoulder to read the note, her jaw dropping. I saw her father, the prime rib connoisseur, staring at the frozen turkey as if it were a personal affront. "She's gone," someone would whisper. "She went on vacation," Megan would say, her voice barely audible. And then, the final, crushing blow. One of the kids, bored and curious, would unwrap the gift. And out would come the cookbook, cooking for a crowd. The silence in my imagined scene would be absolute, followed by a cacophony of panicked, angry, and utterly flabbergasted reactions. The blame would fly. The carefully constructed facade of their perfect family Christmas would crumble into dust, right there on my spotless kitchen floor. And I, the ghost at this disastrous feast, would be thousands of miles away, taking a sip of a cool, refreshing sangria. A small, satisfied smile played on my lips as I adjusted my sunglasses. Christmas Day was the most peaceful I'd had in 5 years. I took a long walk along the black sand beach, letting the waves wash over my feet. I thought of Tom, not with the sharp pang of grief that usually accompanied the holidays, but with a gentle, wistful affection. He would have loved this. He would have loved the audacity of it. He would have been proud of me for finally finding my roar. For 2 weeks, I lived on my own schedule. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired. I explored the island, read my books, and spoke to no one other than waiters and shopkeepers. I didn't check my phone. I had turned off all notifications before I'd even left my driveway. The group chat could be a raging tire fire for all I knew or cared. My silence was my answer. My absence was my statement. When I returned home in early January, I was a different woman. I was tan, relaxed, and my spine felt like it had been replaced with steel. There was a flicker of apprehension as I put my key in the lock. What would I find? A trashed house? A passive-aggressive note left for me? I opened the door and stepped inside. And I was stunned into silence. The house was immaculate. It was as clean, if not cleaner, than when I had left it. The floors shone. The kitchen countertops were sterile. The guest rooms were stripped and tidy. Even the small tree in the living room had been undecorated, the ornaments packed away carefully in their boxes on the mantelpiece. They had cleaned. They had cleaned everything. For a moment, I was confused. And then, I understood. It wasn't a gesture of goodwill. It was a gesture of surrender. It was the frantic, guilt-ridden cleaning of people who had been profoundly and publicly shamed. They had been called out on their entitlements so elegantly and so thoroughly that their only recourse was to try and erase every trace of their presence, to pretend their planned invasion had never happened. They had likely spent their entire vacation in my home walking on eggshells, shushing their children, and cleaning up after themselves in a desperate attempt to appease the ghost of the woman they had so grievously underestimated. The sheer terror of what I might do next had clearly been a powerful motivator. My phone, when I finally turned it on, had hundreds of notifications. Missed calls from David. A flurry of panicked, then angry, then pleading texts. I ignored them all and went to make myself a cup of tea in my own clean, quiet kitchen. David called again that evening. I decided to answer. His voice was strained. "Mom. You're back." "I am," I said calmly. There was a long, awkward pause. "The house looks great." "I'm glad to hear it," I replied, taking a sip of my tea. "Listen, Mom, about Christmas. Megan is, well, she's really upset." "Is she?" I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. "I imagine it must be very upsetting to have to cook and clean for your own family." He was silent. He had no defense. I had used their own logic against them. "It won't happen again," he said finally, his voice small. "No," I agreed. "It won't." And that was it. There was no grand apology, but there didn't need to be. The power dynamic had shifted, fundamentally and permanently. I had taught them a lesson that no amount of shouting or arguing ever could have. I had taught them about consequences. I had taught them about respect. I sat in my armchair, the house wrapped in its familiar, comforting silence. It was a silence I had fought for, a peace I had reclaimed. There was no guilt, no regret. Only a profound sense of rightness. They had wanted to make my house their own for Christmas, and in a way, I had let them. I had let them own the cooking, the cleaning, the responsibility. I had given them exactly what they had asked for, just not in the way they had expected. It was, without a doubt, the most peaceful, satisfying Christmas I had ever had. And I knew, with a certainty that warmed me from the inside out, that from now on, every Christmas, and indeed every day in my home, would be on my terms, and my terms alone. The best mother-in-law in the world had retired. In her place stood a woman who was, finally, the queen of her own castle, and just like that, Laura took back her life, not with a scream, but with a plane ticket and a frozen turkey. It just goes to show that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is your own absence. The most brutal weapon can be a well-timed, well-deserved vacation. What do you think? Was Laura's revenge a stroke of genius, or did she go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you have a story about drawing a line in the sand and reclaiming your peace, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this journey into righteous revenge, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, so you never miss a story of justice being served. Until next time, remember, don't just get mad, get strategic.